5 cents. Could you believe that now?
Oh yeah, well that's true. Of course, that's one of my favorite times. We used to, in the summer times, we'd go to either my grandparents or to some relative's home and made homemade ice cream.
Homemade ice cream.
That was my favorite, without question. And,
we didn't make much money, but we had plenty to eat.
I never hurt for anything to eat, I don't think.
And maybe not the best clothes, but at least they were clean, So.
Well, as always, at my house, I had 3 younger brothers and a sister, and usually a big fight had come lunchtime on our Sunday dinners as to who's going to get the best piece of chicken and all this type thing.
Right.
My poor mother, she'd always end up getting the neck, so I'd tell you how far down she went to get that part of the chicken.
I don't think we'll ever have days like that again, but that's the way it goes. Time waits for no man.
That's true. Time waits for no man. That's a good statement. Well, I can talk about the things that I've learned here and the history, and go on for days and days and days, and just talk about the people that I've had the opportunity to know, and things that I've met. I had a great high school class that I graduated with. 1959, and a lot of good friends, and a lot of them have passed, and it's just hard for me sometimes to talk about it.
Oh, certainly it does. It's really, especially a lot of your friends is going on before you, so.
That's hard. But now I've got I'm excited about what's happening here. My wife was just elected to the school board, and my brother, he was reelected as the juvenile judge here in the county. That's Barry Brown, and my daughter, she's a candidate for mayor of Gallatin, and so we're all out trying to help her to get elected, and I can't say enough good things about my daughter, but she is a good person. She's a good person.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, I know that time passes on, and we have to live with it, regardless how it comes.
You want to talk about Gallatin? I've recently read some very good books about one especially I remember is The Lost Days of Langley Hall. I think the lady's name is Judith Morgan that wrote the book, and it's a great history book. Starting about 1858 through the mid 1950s, and talking about the history of Gallatin and what happened during that time. It's about the life of pretty much Katie Trousdale, later became Katie Allen, and she and her husband are the ones that built Langley Hall, and about the history there. And so it's a great book, and of course all the books that Walter Durham has written about the history of Gallatin and Summit County, and he was certainly a great loss to all of us because of the knowledge that he had about the history of this area, and of course nobody, I guess, will ever be able to equal what he's been able to do, for the county, and recorded on it. And Kip Gaden wrote The Miscarriage of Justice, which is a good history book about the Gallatin, and the way it's talking about the family that as to what happened. It was somewhat of a tragedy, but anyway, it happened, and it talks about the way people lived back in the early 1900s here, and very interesting book to read. read, and it's all these books are good history books, good lessons. This building, and I would say the wall here, and then the Newberry's on this side, and it had a soda fountain, and we'd come in there, and it was, I think Newberry's was a chain, probably one of the first chains, and that came in, and there was a 5 and dime store.
Five and dime store, right.
And as I mentioned earlier, we had the J.C. Penney's. They were just down the street here. There was a store there on the other side of what was First and People's Bank.
Right.
There on the right, and that building has since been torn down. And then the next building was Gallatin Buggy and Implement Company, which is now a furniture store there. And
well, they used to have all kind of wagons, buggies, saddles, bridles, anything the farmer needed, it was there at that time.
The first business in here, they repaired carriages back in 1902 or 1903. And upstairs was a brothel. Yeah.
Is that right?
Do you remember when the Roxy burnt down?
I remember the Roxy burning. I'm not sure I do. I was, of course, Roxy was, the Roxy Theater itself was probably rebuilt sometime in the early 50s, and then it burned, I think, in the late 50s. And then, of course, the old Commerce Union Bank, they bought the property and renovated it and rebuilt it, and that's where their offices were for a long time. And
where was the Roxy at?
Roxy was
right down the street.
Roxy Theater is where the Gallatin Library is now. That's where the Roxy Theater was.
When I grew up, Southern Furniture Company was here over in the corner, and so.
The next place up here, back in those days, was Genesco.
I remember those.
It wasn't called Genesco at that time. It was skips me now as to what they called it, but it was a shoe factory, Gallatin Shoe Factory, I guess is what they called it.
German shoes.
Well, of course, that factory was started by that business was started by Mr. Will Weems and Mr. Jarman and Mr. Lawson. And of course, Mr. Weems is owner of Fairview, and Maxie Jarman, he lived in the Belmead area, but he had a sister that lived out on the North Water, and I think she had a son, I believe, that was in a movie. I forget now. It was about Maxie Jarman Jr. was his name, I think, and about a fawn. I remember it was an old movie made sometime in the 30s, and he was a star in that movie. But going back to it was General Shoe Company is what they called it, and it was they had 2 factories here. One out on what we call Factory Lane, that was plant number 2, and this is known as plant number 1. But this building was originally built by some fellow that came into town. It was going to be a hotel, and he didn't get it completed. So later it became, for a while, it was Gallatin High School, or I think they called it Central High School at that time.
It was.
But that's where the factory was. Of course, I first started to work Security Federal. I went to work at Security Federal, and it was right across the street, and that's where they had that factory over there, but you keep talking about pay. I mean, that was in 1964. I remember that probably the highest paid person that they had, because they used to always walk across the money. I always seemed to have plenty of money, but I think the highest paid person they had was making like $64 a week. Is what they made at General Shoe.
Charles C. Parks was a big business in Gallatin when I grew up.
Wholesale grocer.
That's right.
They had a big business here. And matter of fact, Mr. Parks built a home that Bud Coley and his wife live on Main Street here.
Right.
And, that's where he lives right now.
Yeah.
When I first moved here, there was an old hardware store just past the courthouse. What was that called?
That's Gallatin Buggy and Implement. That's a hardware store that you're talking. That's the one we've been talking about. That's what